The vast bridge of the EFS Thunderhawk hummed with activity as crew members moved between their stations with practiced efficiency. Admiral Park Daho's weathered face reflected the soft blue glow of the holographic display floating before him. The three-dimensional map showed a pulsing red dot, the origin of a distress signal that had caught humanity's attention merely hours ago. Lieutenant Kim Ji-woo sat at her communications station, her fingers dancing across the haptic interface as she ran yet another authentication check on the alien transmission. It was the third time she'd verified it. But when dealing with first contact scenarios, there was no such thing as being too careful. "Admiral," Ji-woo called out, her voice clear and professional. "I've completed the third verification. The signal is authentic. It's definitely coming from the Galactic Council's emergency broadcast network." Daho nodded, his eyes never leaving the holographic display. 20 years of service in Earth's space fleet had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now, they were telling him this was big. The signal's strength and complexity suggested a level of technology far beyond humanity's current capabilities. The bridge crew worked quietly, each focused on their tasks as they prepared the massive warship for what might come. Through the reinforced viewport, Earth's orbital defense platforms were visible, their weapon systems dormant but ready. Beyond them, the familiar sight of other ships from the 7th Fleet moved into formation. "Sir," Ji-woo spoke again, this time with a hint of amusement in her voice. "I'm receiving multiple communications from the Galactic Council representatives. They seem concerned about our response level." Daho turned away from the display, raising an eyebrow. "Concerned? Elaborate, Lieutenant." "They're questioning why we're deploying the entire 7th Fleet for a distress call. Their exact words were, 'This level of military mobilization seems excessive for a standard emergency response.'" A few crew members chuckled quietly at their stations. Humanity had only recently gained membership in the Galactic Council, and the cultural differences were still causing confusion on both sides. The aliens had classified Earth as a death world due to its harsh conditions. Everything from its gravity to its weather patterns were considered extreme by galactic standards. "Send them our standard response," Daho ordered, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Inform them that this is basic human emergency protocol." Ji-woo nodded, transmitting the message. The response came almost immediately, and she had to suppress a laugh. "Sir, they're asking if we understand that this might be considered an aggressive action by some council members." "Tell them," Daho said, walking to the center of the bridge, "that humanity has learned through bitter experience that it's better to arrive over-prepared than to wish for reinforcements that will arrive too late." The Admiral's words carried across the bridge, and several crew members nodded in agreement. Earth's history was filled with examples of disasters where help had arrived too late, and humanity had learned those lessons well. "Engineering reports all systems ready, sir," announced the chief engineer through the comm system. "FTL drives are charged and waiting for your command." Daho took a moment to look at his crew. They were young, most of them, but well-trained. They had grown up in a world that had already reached for the stars, and they carried themselves with the quiet confidence that came from knowing they were humanity's first line of defense. "Navigation," he called out, "plot our jump coordinates to the signal's origin. Lieutenant Ji-woo, send word to all ships in the fleet. We jump in 5 minutes." The bridge erupted into focused activity. Officers called out confirmations and status reports as the massive warship prepared for faster-than-light travel. Through the viewport, Daho could see the other ships of the 7th Fleet moving into jump formation. Destroyers, cruisers, and support vessels, all taking their assigned positions. "Admiral," Ji-woo said, her voice now serious, "the Council representatives are requesting one final clarification. They want to know if we understand that the distress signal is coming from a sector that's considered hazardous by Council standards." Daho actually laughed at that. "Tell them, Lieutenant, that we're counting on it. After all, we're Deathworlders. Hazardous conditions are our specialty." The bridge crew shared knowing smiles, What the Council considered hazardous was often just another day on Earth. High gravity. They'd evolved under it. Extreme temperatures. Their planet had everything from Arctic wastes to scorching deserts. Toxic atmospheres. They'd dealt with worse in their industrial revolution. All ships report ready for jump, sir, the navigation officer announced. Daho took his command chair, strapping himself in as the ship's jump countdown began. Lieutenant Jiwoo, send one final message to the Council representatives. Ready, sir. Tell them. The 7th Fleet is responding to your distress call. We're coming to help. Try not to be alarmed by what happens next. As the countdown reached 0, Daho gave the order that would echo across the fleet. All ships, execute FTL jump. The space around the 7th Fleet warped and twisted as 47 of humanity's most powerful warships vanished into faster-than-light travel. The Galactic Council was about to learn why Earth's harsh environment hadn't broken humanity. It had made them stronger. They were about to show the galaxy why you should never underestimate a species that had evolved on a death world. Help was coming, whether the galaxy was ready for it or not. The metallic corridors of the Galactic Council vessel gleamed under soft ambient lighting as Commander Lee Sunmai led her diplomatic team forward. Her boots made solid contact with each step, unaffected by the ship's high-gravity setting that was making their alien hosts move with visible strain. The Council representative, a being that appeared to be made of living crystal, watched with poorly concealed alarm as Sunmai and her team moved naturally through what they considered a hazardous environment. The crystalline alien's faceted surface caught the light, creating rainbow patterns on the walls as it shifted uncomfortably. Please, Commander, the alien spoke through a translation device, its crystalline form vibrating slightly. You don't need to maintain this show of strength. We can adjust the gravity to more comfortable levels. Sunma smiled politely, her dark eyes taking in every detail of their surroundings with military precision. This is perfectly comfortable for us. Earth's gravity is actually slightly higher than this. The alien's crystalline structure seemed to shudder at the mention of Earth. Like most Council species, they viewed humanity's homeworld as an impossibly hostile environment. The fact that humans had not only survived but thrived there challenged their understanding of what was possible. 3 star systems, the alien began, its translator struggling to convey the mix of fear and awe in its harmonic voice. The swarm has already consumed 3 complete systems. We still don't understand how they breached our defensive networks so quickly. Sun and his team exchanged glances. They had studied the reports during their FTL jump, but hearing it directly from a Council member made the situation more real. The swarm, as the Council called them, had appeared seemingly from nowhere and overwhelmed defenses that had stood for centuries. The swarm's attack patterns suggest a hive mind structure, Sunlay observed, her military training coming to the fore. Have you identified their command and control systems? The crystalline being's surface rippled in what might have been surprise. You speak of fighting them as if it were possible. These are beings that consume entire worlds, Commander. The alien's words were cut short by a deep, resonating boom that shook the entire ship. Sun's trained ear recognized it immediately. Weapons fire. Her team was already moving before the ship's alarms began to wail. Contact. One of her officers shouted, pulling out a compact scanner. Multiple hostile signatures dropping out of FTL. The Council vessel rocked with more impacts as the swarm ships opened fire. Through the corridor's viewing ports, Sunmai caught glimpses of dark, organic-looking vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with an unnatural grace, their formation shifting like schools of predatory fish. Your safe room, Sunmai demanded, turning to the crystalline alien. Where is it? The alien was frozen in terror, its crystalline form vibrating at a frequency that made nearby metals hum. Around them, other Council species were panicking, some freezing in place while others rushed in random directions. Sun and his team, by contrast, moved with practiced efficiency. They had drilled for scenarios like this countless times. Two officers immediately set up defensive positions, while others began herding the alien diplomats toward safety. "The safe room," Sun Mai repeated, her voice cutting through the chaos. The alien seemed to snap out of its paralysis. "2 levels down, Central Core. But our defenses will hold longer with our help." Sun Mai finished, already activating her comm unit. "This is Commander Lee to EFS Thunderhawk. We have hostile contact at the Council diplomatic vessel, requesting immediate support and combat teams." The ship shuddered again, harder this time. Emergency lights flashed as artificial gravity fluctuated. The Council aliens watched in amazement as Sun Mi's team maintained their balance and continued their operations without missing a beat. "Everyone move," Sun Mai ordered, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed in crisis situations. "Security team, defensive formation. Civilians in the center. Move." The group made their way through the corridors, human soldiers calmly guiding terrified alien diplomats. Sun Mai noted with professional interest how the swarm's attacks seemed to target the ship's communications array first, a tactical choice that suggested intelligence rather than mere instinct. They reached the safe room just as another barrage rocked the ship. The crystalline alien's hands shook as it input the access code, its translator struggling to keep up with its rapid harmonic speech. "We never expected your kind to respond so swiftly," it said as the heavy doors slid open. "The Council said humans were dangerous, but we didn't understand. We see now. You're not just surviving this. You're fighting back." Sun Mi positioned her team around the safe room's entrance, establishing clear fields of fire. Through the ship's vibrations, she could feel the familiar hum of human warships engaging in combat. The 7th Fleet had arrived. "Fighting back is what we do best," she said, checking her weapon. "When you evolve on a world that tries to kill you every day, you learn not to give up easily." The alien diplomats watched in a mixture of fear and fascination as the human team efficiently organized the defense of their position. These creatures from a death world, these humans who casually walked through high gravity and remained calm in crisis, were showing them something they had never seen before: the capability to stand and fight against the impossible. As the sounds of battle echoed through the ship, Sun Mai allowed herself a small smile. The swarm was about to learn what humanity had known for millennia: that sometimes the most dangerous beings were the ones who had evolved in the harshest conditions. The galaxy was about to witness what happened when you cornered a species that had spent its entire existence overcoming impossible odds. The fight for survival was about to become a fight for victory, and humanity was just getting started. Captain Yoon Tedesung stood motionless on the bridge of the EFS Stalwart, his eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the approaching swarm fleet. Around him, the bridge crew worked in near-total darkness, their stations dimmed to maintain stealth protocols. The only illumination came from the soft red emergency lighting and the holographic display of Proxima Beta's massive asteroid field. 50 human warships lay hidden among the rocks, their engines cold and their systems running on minimal power. To any outside observer, they would appear as nothing more than slightly unusual asteroids, exactly as planned. Swarm vessels maintaining their course, "Sir," reported Lieutenant Park, her voice barely above a whisper despite the fact that sound couldn't travel in space. "Old habits died hard. They'll enter the field in approximately 7 minutes." Tae-sung nodded, watching the enemy ship's formation. The swarm vessels moved with an unsettling organic grace, their biomechanical hulls rippling as they navigated through space. They were confident, maybe even arrogant, believing they had cornered their prey. "Status of the alien observer ships?" Ta-sung asked. "The Galactic Council vessels are maintaining position at the edge of the system," Park responded. "They're still protesting our strategy, sir. They say using the asteroid field as a battleground is suicidal." A few quiet chuckles echoed across the bridge. The Council species had never understood humanity's approach to warfare. They saw obstacles where humans saw opportunities, dangers where humans sought advantages. "Send to all ships," Tai Sung ordered, his voice calm and steady. "Prepare to execute Battle Plan ICO on my mark. Engineering teams stand by for full power restoration. Weapons, confirm targeting solutions on all designated asteroids." The swarm ships entered the outer edge of the asteroid field, their formation spreading out to navigate the scattered rocks. They moved confidently, their sensors likely detecting nothing but normal asteroid activity. They had no way of knowing that for the past week, human engineers had been placing gravitic charges throughout the field, turning the entire region into one massive trap. 4 minutes to optimal position, Park announced. Tai Sung watched as the enemy ships moved deeper into the field. The swarm had devastated 3 star systems by now, but they had never faced humanity in a proper battle. They were about to learn why Earth's children were classified as Deathworlders. "All ships, power up on my mark," Tai Sung commanded. 3, 2, 1, mark. 50 warships suddenly blazed to life among the asteroids. The swarm vessels reacted immediately, their organic hulls rippling with surprise as they detected the human fleet. But before they could respond, Tai Sung gave his next order. "Execute Battle Plan Echo. Detonate charges in sectors 7 through 12. The carefully placed gravitic charges exploded, their invisible forces yanking asteroids out of their orbits. Massive rocks accelerated toward the swarm ships, which found themselves caught in an artificial meteor storm. Their elegant formations broke apart as they tried to evade the suddenly hostile environment. "All ships, weapons free," Tai Sung ordered. "Remember your training. Use the debris for cover. Don't let them regroup." The human fleet erupted into action. Ships that had evolved from centuries of warfare on Earth now demonstrated why they were feared across the galaxy. They darted between asteroids with impossible precision, using the very obstacles that the swarm tried to avoid as shields and weapons. The ESS Stalwart's engines roared to life as Tai Sung ordered a full attack run. His ship sliced through the chaos of the asteroid field, its heavy guns targeting the largest swarm vessel in range. The enemy ship tried to evade, but found itself hemmed in by the very asteroids it had been trying to navigate around. "Direct hits on multiple swarm vessels," Park reported, her voice now energized with the thrill of battle. "They're trying to withdraw, sir, but the gravitational disturbances from our charges are disrupting their formation." Tai Sung allowed himself a grim smile. The swarm had expected to find frightened prey hiding in the asteroid field. Instead, they had found predators who had turned the entire region into a hunting ground. "Launch fighters," he commanded. "Tell them to target any swarm ship trying to escape the field. Force them deeper into our trap." Human fighters poured from their carrier ships, small and agile craft that danced through the asteroid field like they were born to it. In many ways, they were. Their designs had been refined through countless battles in Earth's own treacherous debris fields. The swarm ships, designed for straight-line attacks and overwhelming force, found themselves in an environment where those tactics were worse than useless. Every attempt to gather into their usual attack formations was met with more asteroid impacts and precise fire from human vessels that seemed to appear and disappear among the rocks at will. "Sir," Park called out, "the Council observers are. They're requesting permission to move closer. They want to study our tactics." "Granted," Tai Sung replied, never taking his eyes off the battle. "Let them see what happens when you corner a species that evolved fighting against their own world." The battle continued for another hour, but the outcome was never in doubt. The swarm, faced with an enemy that turned their environment against them, broke apart into smaller and smaller groups. Each group was hunted down methodically by human ships that had mastered the art of fighting in conditions that other species considered impossible. As the last swarm ship exploded in a bizarre mix of mechanical and organic debris, Tai Sung finally allowed himself to relax slightly. The bridge crew broke into quiet celebrations, but he knew this was just the beginning. "Send word to the fleet," he ordered. "Well done, everyone. But remember, we've just shown the swarm how we fight. They'll adapt. Next time will be harder." The crew nodded soberly, but their eyes showed pride. They had proven what humanity had always known, that the very conditions that made Earth a death world had forged them into something unique in the galaxy. They hadn't just survived their harsh world. They had learned to turn its dangers into advantages. And now, the galaxy was learning why you should never corner a species that called a death world home. The conference room aboard the Galactic Council station hummed with an array of atmospheric regulators, each maintaining specific conditions for the diverse gathering of alien strategists. Dr. Han Myre stood at the front, her environmental suit unnecessary in the human-compatible section where she presented. The collection of beings before her represented 17 different species, each adapted to their own unique worlds. Some floated in containment bubbles filled with methane, others pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, and a few existed as pure energy contained within specialized fields. "Let me show you something," Myre said, activating the holographic display. The room filled with images of Earth's most extreme environments, the peaks of Mount Everest, the depths of the Mariana Trench, the Sahara Desert, and the frozen wastes of Antarctica. "These are training grounds for our military forces," she explained, watching as the aliens' various sensory organs focused on the harsh landscapes. "Every environment you see here would be lethal to unprotected humans within hours or even minutes." A methane-breathing strategist, its tentacles waving in agitation, spoke through its translator. "You intentionally train in environments that could kill you. This seems unnecessarily risky." Myre smiled, advancing to the next set of images. Human soldiers training in these extreme conditions. How else would we learn to survive them? When your species evolved on a world that constantly tries to kill you, you learn to turn those challenges into advantages. The aliens watched in fascination as the presentation showed humans diving in crushing ocean depths, climbing sheer cliff faces, and surviving in both freezing cold and scorching heat. Their reactions ranged from disbelief to horror to growing understanding. But surely, a crystalline being chimed in, its surface reflecting rainbow patterns. There must be casualties in such training. "Sometimes," Myre admitted, "but we've learned that controlled exposure to danger creates soldiers who can handle any situation. It's why we were able to turn Proxima Beta's asteroid field into a weapon against the swarm." The mention of that battle caused a ripple of harmonic tones through the assembled aliens. They had all studied the footage of human ships using gravitational distortions and asteroids to destroy a superior swarm force. A being of pure energy pulsed with curiosity. "Your species seems to embrace chaos rather than fear it. This is unprecedented in our experience." Myre nodded, switching to footage of urban warfare training. "Chaos is just another tool in our arsenal. Earth's environments taught us that rigid patterns lead to extinction. Adaptation is survival." The aliens watched as human soldiers demonstrated their ability to fight in zero gravity, underwater, in extreme temperatures, and even in toxic atmospheres. Each scenario would have been considered a worst-case emergency by Council species, but humans trained for them routinely. "Your combat simulations," a silicon-based life form observed, "they appear to intentionally malfunction. Why would you design training systems to fail?" "Because real combat isn't predictable," Myre explained. "We don't just train for ideal conditions, we train for everything that could go wrong. When your equipment fails in the middle of a blizzard, you need to know how to survive." The methane breather's tentacles twisted in what might have been respect. "This explains your effectiveness against the swarm. While we focused on perfecting our response to their known tactics, you prepared for the unknown." Myre advanced to her final slides. Images of Earth's natural disasters. Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and tsunamis filled the display. These are not unusual events on Earth. Every human grows up knowing that their world can turn against them at any moment. We don't just survive these conditions, we learn from them. The aliens processed this information in their various ways. Some generated complex mathematical models, others communed in frequencies beyond human perception, and a few simply sat in stunned silence. When the swarm attacked, Mayray continued, they expected to find species that would break under pressure. Instead, they found humanity, a species that grows stronger when challenged. Every obstacle they put in our path becomes another tool in our arsenal. A collective realization seemed to sweep through the room. These aliens, many of whom had initially viewed humans as primitive or reckless, were beginning to understand humanity's seeming disadvantages, their harsh homeworld, their need to adapt to extreme conditions, their constant exposure to danger, had forged them into something unique in the galaxy. This is why, the energy being pulsed, you don't just survive hazardous conditions, you thrive in them. Mayray nodded, thinking of the countless generations that had led to this moment. Every human carries within them the legacy of ancestors who looked at deadly conditions and saw opportunities. We don't just endure challenges. We seek them out, learn from them, master them. As the presentation concluded, the alien strategists began discussing among themselves their various forms of communication, creating the symphony of clicks, hums, and pulses. They were already talking about implementing human training methods, about learning to see obstacles as advantages. One final question, the methane breather asked. How do you maintain morale when constantly facing such dangers? Mayray's answer was simple, by remembering that every challenge we overcome makes us stronger. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our tactics. It's our absolute refusal to accept limitations. The aliens left the conference room with a new understanding of their human allies. They had come seeking to learn about human warfare, but they had discovered something far more fundamental, the secret of why a species from a death world had become one of the most formidable forces in the galaxy. It wasn't just about surviving against impossible odds. It was about turning those very odds into advantages. And as the swarm would soon learn, they had made a serious mistake in assuming that harsh conditions would weaken humanity. After all, those conditions were exactly what had made humans who they were. General Choi Do-yun stood before the assembled fleet commanders. His holographic image broadcast simultaneously to 50 different ships. The alien commanders, representing the combined forces of the Galactic Council, watched with various sensory organs as he manipulated the tactical display showing their planned counter-offensive against the swarm. Traditional military doctrine focuses on position and firepower, Do-yun said, his hands moving through the holographic battle space. But warfare isn't just about who has the biggest guns or the best physician. It's about psychology. The aliens' confusion was evident even across species barriers. A crystalline commander's surface flickered with uncertainty patterns. Psychology. Against a hive mind. Do-yun smiled, adjusting the display to show the swarm's previous attack patterns. Especially against a hive mind, they think as one, which means they can be deceived as one. Watch. The tactical display shifted to show the human fleet's proposed formation. Instead of the standard defensive positions the Council forces typically used, the ships were arranged in what appeared to be a scattered, almost chaotic pattern. This looks like retreat, a methane-breathing commander observed through its translator. Our forces appear vulnerable and disorganized. Exactly, Do-yun replied. We don't just react to the enemy. We make them react to us. Fear is a weapon. Uncertainty is a weapon. Even retreat can be a weapon if used correctly. He manipulated the hologram, showing how the seemingly random positions created multiple attack vectors. The swarm operates on collective intelligence. Show them weakness, and they'll attack as one, exactly where we want them. The alien commanders watched as Do-yun walked them through the strategy. Human ships would appear to flee in disarray, drawing the swarm into carefully prepared killing zones. Each retreat would lead to an ambush. Each apparent vulnerability would be a trap. But the casualties, a silicon-based commander objected. The risks to the ships acting as bait are calculated and accepted, Do-yun finished. Every human commander in this fleet understands that sometimes you must risk everything to win everything. We've trained for this our entire lives. He showed them footage from Earth's military history, ancient armies using feigned retreats, modern forces using deception and psychological warfare, space fleet exercises that seem to defy conventional logic. "Your species embraces chaos," the crystalline commander observed. "You use it as a tool." Du Yun nodded. "On Earth, those who couldn't adapt to chaos didn't survive. The swarm thinks it understands warfare because it thinks as one mind. But that's its weakness. It can't conceive of sacrificing parts for the whole." The tactical display shifted again, showing the full scope of the battle plan. Human ships would split into seemingly vulnerable groups, while Council forces provided what appeared to be inadequate support. Every movement was designed to feed false information to the swarm's collective intelligence. "When they attack here," Du Yun indicated a particular sector, "they'll think they're striking at our weakest point. Instead, they'll find themselves caught between our fleet's hammer and the anvil of Proxima Beta's gravity well." The alien commanders began to understand. What looked like disorder was actually intricate planning. What seemed like weakness was carefully crafted strength. These humans, these Deathworlders, had turned warfare into an art form that went beyond simple combat. "Your crews will accept such dangerous positions?" the methane breather asked. "They will willingly act as bait." "Colonel," Lieutenant Park called softly. "Large group approaching. At least 20 combat drones." Hai-Jin watched through her visor as the heavily armed swarm units moved past their position. The combat drones were even more nightmarish than the workers, living weapons bred for war. Yet they moved with the same hive mind-directed precision, never suspecting that their greatest weakness lay in their perfect unity. "Team 2, deploy disruptors on my mark," she ordered. "Team 3, stand by to activate the electromagnetic pulse. Let's show them why you should never corner a species that evolved as both predator and prey." Her team waited in perfect stillness as the combat drones passed. Years of training in Earth's most hostile environment had taught them patience. They had learned to hunt in volcanic vents, to stay motionless in Arctic winds, to survive where survival seemed impossible. 3, 2, 1, mark. The psychic disruptors activated simultaneously across multiple points in the hive cluster. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the walls themselves began to shudder as conflicting signals tore through the swarm's collective consciousness. The combat drones stopped moving, their biomechanical bodies twitching as contradictory commands flooded their neural networks. The worker drones began to collide with each other, their perfect coordination shattered by the disruption of their hive-mind connection. "Electromagnetic pulse. Now," Hai-Jin commanded. The EMP burst added to the chaos, overloading the mechanical components that the swarm relied on to process their collective thoughts. The hybrid nature of their technology, once their greatest strength, became their greatest vulnerability. "It's working," Lieutenant Park reported, excitement breaking through his professional calm. "The hive mind is trying to compensate, but the conflicting signals are spreading faster than they can adapt." Hai-Jin watched as the swarm's perfect organization dissolved into chaos. The beings that had terrified the galaxy with their unified purpose were learning what humans had known since they first evolved. That adaptation required individual thought, not just collective reaction. "All teams, fall back to extraction points," she ordered. "The fleet will begin their attack run as soon as we're clear." As they moved through the now chaotic hive cluster, Hai-Jin allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The swarm had built their defenses assuming that no enemy could survive their hostile environment long enough to reach their core. They hadn't counted on facing a species that had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. The radiation levels were still lethal. The environment was still hostile. But humanity had long since learned to turn such challenges into advantages. Where other species saw impossible conditions, they saw opportunities. "Colonel," Sergeant Kim reported as they reached their extraction point, "the fleet reports massive confusion in swarm ship movements. The hive mind disruption is affecting their entire military structure." Hai-Jin nodded as she led her team onto their stealth shuttle. The swarm was learning what Earth's apex predators had discovered long ago, that sometimes the most dangerous prey was the one you thought you had cornered. As their shuttle accelerated away from the hive cluster, they could see the human fleet moving in for the killing blow. The swarm ships, cut off from their central intelligence, were reduced to individual units without coordination or purpose. The turning point of the war had come not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through humanity's unique ability to survive and adapt. They had turned the swarm's greatest strength into their greatest weakness, just as they had learned to turn Earth's hostile environments into training grounds. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity had not just survived on their death world. They had thrived there. And the swarm would be the first to understand that sometimes the most dangerous enemy was the one who had evolved fighting against their own world. The celebration aboard the Galactic Council station maintained a dignified atmosphere, despite marking humanity's decisive victory over the swarm. Admiral Park Daho stood at the observation deck, watching ships from 100 different species move through the renewed trade lanes. The defeat of the swarm had ushered in an era of unprecedented cooperation among the galaxy's civilizations. Every human in this fleet knows that survival sometimes requires risk, Du Yun explained. We've evolved understanding that safety is never guaranteed. What matters is turning danger to our advantage. The display showed the final phase of the battle plan, multiple swarm groups being drawn into separate traps, their hive mind connection working against them as false information cascaded through their collective consciousness. Remember, Du Yun concluded, the swarm thinks it's hunting us. Let them think that. Let them believe they have us cornered. Because that's when humanity is most dangerous, when our enemies think they have us beaten. The alien commanders shared glances, their various forms of communication conveying a growing appreciation for human strategic thinking. These creatures from a death world weren't just surviving anymore. They were teaching the galaxy a new way of fighting. This plan, the crystalline commander chimed, it goes against everything we know about fleet tactics. Good, Du Yun replied. Because everything you know about fleet tactics hasn't stopped the swarm. Sometimes victory requires thinking in ways your enemy can't understand. As the briefing concluded, the alien commanders began coordinating with their human counterparts, learning to see warfare through new eyes. They were beginning to understand why humans had thrived on their harsh world, not despite the challenges, but because of them. The swarm had awakened something dangerous, a species that had turned survival itself into a weapon. And as the combined fleet prepared for their counterattack, the galaxy was about to learn why you should never corner a species that had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. Prepare your ships, Du Yun ordered. We attack at dawn. The commanders acknowledged the order, their various forms of agreement creating a symphony of alien sounds. They had come to this briefing expecting a traditional battle plan. Instead, they had received a lesson in how humanity had survived on their death world, by turning every disadvantage into an advantage, every threat into an opportunity. The counterattack would begin soon, and the swarm would learn what humans had known for millennia, that true strength comes not from overwhelming force, but from the ability to adapt, to deceive, and to turn an enemy's greatest strength into their greatest weakness. Colonel Kang Hai-jin moved silently through the biomechanical corridors of the swarm's primary hive cluster, her radiation-hardened combat suit registering levels that would kill an unprotected human in minutes. Around her, 5 members of her stealth team advanced like shadows, their movements precise and practiced. The walls pulsed with an organic rhythm, a constant reminder that they were essentially inside a living entity. Twisted metal merged with biological matter in ways that defied conventional engineering. The air itself seemed to whisper with the thoughts of the hive mind. Radiation levels at 300 rems and climbing. Lieutenant Park whispered through their secure comm channel. The aliens weren't kidding about this place being lethal. Hai-jin checked her suit's readings. They had trained for these conditions in simulators, but the reality was far more intense. The swarm had evolved to use radiation as both a defense and a communication medium. To them, This environment was perfect. To most species, it was certain death. Movement ahead, Sergeant Kim reported. Looks like worker drones. They haven't detected us yet. Through her enhanced visor, Hai-Jin watched the swarm drones shuffle past. They were horrifying combinations of organic and mechanical parts. Their bodies adapted to thrive in this radioactive hell. The drones moved with purpose but showed no sign of individual thought. Everything they did was controlled by the hive mind. Team 2, in position at the secondary node, came the report through their comms. Ready to deploy on your mark. Hai-Jin signaled her team to hold position. They were deep inside enemy territory, closer to the swarm's central consciousness than any other species had ever managed to get. The alien allies had said this mission was impossible, that no living beings could survive this deep in the hive cluster. But they hadn't counted on human ingenuity and determination. Humanity had spent centuries learning to survive in environments that should have killed them. This was just another challenge to overcome. All teams, final equipment check, Hai-Jin ordered. Psychic disruptors at full charge. Remember your training. We'll only get one shot at this. The psychic disruptors were a new weapon, developed by human scientists who had studied the swarm's hive mind communication. In theory, they would create a cascade of conflicting signals that would throw the entire collective into chaos. In practice, well, they were about to find out. Around him, representatives from various council species engaged in quiet conversation. There was none of the wild celebration one might expect after such a momentous victory. Instead, there was a sense of profound respect, and perhaps a touch of fear. Admiral Park, the council president, approached, its crystalline form catching the light of distant stars. Your species has given us much to consider. Daho turned to face the president, noting how the other alien representatives subtly moved closer to listen. We simply did what was necessary for survival. It's what humanity has always done. Your definition of necessary is what fascinates us, the president responded. Your species frightens us, I must admit, but we're grateful that you fight for peace. The admiral's expression remained neutral, but his eyes showed understanding. Humanity doesn't seek war, he explained. We just learned long ago that being prepared for it is the best way to prevent it. A methane-breathing delegate floated forward in its containment field. You turned the swarm's own defenses against them, used their strengths as weaknesses. This is not traditional warfare. Traditional warfare gets people killed, Daho responded simply. We prefer to adapt and overcome. The gathering of aliens considered this. They had watched as human forces used tactics that seemed insane by their standards, deliberately entering lethal radiation zones, using astronomical phenomena as weapons, treating retreat as attack. Yet every seemingly reckless move had been calculated, precise, effective. The military academics are still studying your battle at Proxima Beta. A silicon-based being chimed in. Using an asteroid field as a weapon, it changes everything we thought we knew about space combat. Daho smiled slightly. On Earth, we have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When you evolve on a world that constantly tries to kill you, you learn to use everything at your disposal. The council president's crystalline surface rippled with patterns that indicated deep thought. Your world, Earth, we classified it as a death world, assuming it would produce only primitive survivors. We were wrong. You weren't entirely wrong, Daho admitted. Earth did produce survivors, but it also taught us that surviving isn't enough. You have to adapt, improve, overcome. Every challenge is an opportunity to grow stronger. The assembled aliens shared glances, their various forms of communication creating the subtle symphony of clicks, hums, and light patterns. They were beginning to understand that humanity's harsh homeworld hadn't just created tough survivors. It had forged a species that turned disadvantages into strengths. The swarm believed their hive mind made them invincible, the president observed. They never considered that individual thinking could be an advantage. That was their mistake, Daho replied. They assumed that perfect unity was strength. But adaptation requires diversity, different viewpoints, different solutions, different approaches to problems. The station's vast windows showed the rebuilt defense platforms, now incorporating human designs alongside alien technology. The synthesis of different species approaches had created something entirely new, just as humanity had always done with every challenge they faced. Your species will have a permanent seat on the council now, the president announced. We need your perspective, your unique way of thinking. Daho nodded, understanding the responsibility this represented. We'll do our best to help maintain peace. But remember, peace through strength isn't just a slogan for us. It's how we survived our own world. The aliens gathered closer, their fear now mixed with respect and curiosity. The species they had once dismissed as primitive Deathworlders had become their greatest defenders, teaching the galaxy that true strength came not from avoiding challenges, but from learning to overcome them. The galaxy has changed, the president stated simply. Perhaps it needed to change. The swarm taught us that we had become complacent. You taught us how to be stronger. As the celebration continued around them, Daho watched the stars through the station's windows. Humanity had come a long way from their harsh beginnings on Earth. They had taken their place among the stars not despite their challenges, but because of them.